let's go ahead and get started. Hey, Paula, nice to see you again as well. Excited for everyone to be here. I'm going to do a quick intro. Usually I do a longer intro for our panelists, but we have four this time, so we're going to go pretty short and then jump into it and have a wonderful conversation. I first want to start with Jenna. GenaSis is one of our guides. She holds a bachelor's degree in behavioral science and health, plus an MBA in health services. Her expertise is alternative wellness practices, thriving relationships, and one part that I absolutely want to highlight, which is self-love and leisure. So thank you, Jenna, for being here today.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Priscilla, one of our many authors on our guides platform. I started with that because she's also one of my guides. I've connected with her a few times and it's been wonderful. She's an intuitive and sustainable business strategist, as well as spiritual guide. I've mentioned that she is the author of Soulfluent Leadership Archetypes, and her expertise includes personal development plan, accountability partner, and living your purpose. Thanks for being here, Priscilla.
Thank you for having me.
Right, and moving down the line, I'm going to jump over to Carolyn. Carolyn is one of our most decorated guides as far as her ability to serve. So I appreciate you being here, Carolyn. Carolyn's degree, just a quick background on her, is in nutrition science, and she's also an educator in the field, as well as an instructor of yoga and other practices supporting both the mind and the body. Her expertise also includes thriving relationships, happiness mindset, and dealing with difficult people, which for anyone on the call, you can go ahead and put yes in the chat if you feel like it. We've all dealt with difficult people. It's just a part of, especially if you lived in the tri-state area. Anyway, last, but definitely not least, this is her second time, I believe, on Thrive Time. So I want to give her a huge shout out for coming back on again, and that's Leslie. Leslie is one of our team leads here at LifeGuides. She's a certified life guide as well as spiritual coach, as well as an intuitive guide and Reiki master. Her topics that you can find her under include family conflict, stress, anxiety management, as well as learning to meditate. So again, I'm just going to say a thank you to all of you ladies. Welcome to our Thrive Time event today. And I want to get started by reading what I found interesting, which is today is October 12th. Not to date us, but the day is October 12th. And 2 days ago was National Mental Health Day. And this is, of course, a part of our topic. So what I wanted to do was just read to you for a moment what the World Health Organization defines as mental health. So mental health is not just the absence of a mental disorder. It is defined as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, as well as how they can cope with the normal stresses of life and how they can work productively and fruitfully and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So that's a quick overview of mental health. And what ties into all of that is well-being. Sometimes people think well-being is one and mental health is something else, but really they're all connected in this, I guess you could say, synergistic network that we call life and thriving. So with that in mind, I wanted to start by just discussing how mental health is multifaceted. So I want to come to you first, Jenna, and I wanted to ask you about how do you see well-being, like as far as it being multifaceted, like how do you see the many components of well-being?
Certainly, Dave. So yes, as you touched on with the World Health Organization definition, well-being is a very broad topic and it encompasses a lot of different parts and pieces. So there's emotional components, mental components, physical components, and spiritual components. And then all of these break down even further. And for me, I think one of the key things to keep in mind is that emotional well-being is all about your ability to maintain or to return to balance. After encountering challenges that occur, all of us experience challenges. It's really our ability to navigate through these challenges, staying balanced, and that comes from being positively resourced, building up these resources so that we can find the positive emotions, we can find the moods and the thoughts and the feelings that settle us, that ground us, that help us stay resourced. Even when we're confronted with this type of adversity or stressful situations, we're able to remain resilient.
Outstanding. I want to go just a little bit further before we move on. And I wanted to ask, what is like one of your favorite ways to improve emotional well-being? I know that you have, you focus on pleasure as one of your topics. So I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite way to improve emotional well-being?
Well, you're so right. A critical piece that is often overlooked, or worse, shamed or made wrong, is our desires, our pleasure, and our sexuality. And I just want to say that all of you is welcome here. My favorite way is really doing things that bring me pleasure. And there are so many different ways of finding pleasure. Just looking around, you can say it's a beautiful sunshiny day and get pleasure out of the sun shining or the warmth that it brings your body. Being able to say, what could I do to make this moment even more pleasurable? It might be a soft fuzzy blanket, or petting your cat, sipping tea, watching the sunrise. There's just so many different ways to make every moment more pleasurable. And being able to just enjoy that, to know that you deserve to enjoy your life and find these little pleasures throughout life.
Nice. And that brings me to a conversation that Carolyn, we had as we were kind of prepping for this, and we were talking about lifestyles, healthy lifestyles and how to develop them. Of course, I believe that there's a pleasure element to developing a healthy lifestyle. You have to like what you're doing, or you have to find pleasure in it, or you'll just be begrudgingly pushing yourself. So I wanted to ask you, how can someone develop a healthy lifestyle without it being overwhelming? So yeah, how can they do that?
Well, I love what GenaSis just said. Yes, enjoying ourselves, having pleasure in our lives is so important. And one of the things we can do is just look at our life with anticipation and fun. I believe that having being well physically and optimizing our physical and well-being makes it so much easier to enjoy the rest of life. And in developing healthy lifestyles, there are just little things that we can do. It doesn't take a huge change or a massive overhaul of our lives, but we can make just fine, subtle, little changes in our lives. Just substituting better nutrition, finding exercise program or activities that we love and we really enjoy, and then working these things into our lives.
Nice. I want to come back to nutrition in a bit, because nutrition is a big part of, I believe, how our gut is working, how we feel, our emotional stability, so to speak, is sometimes based on nutrition. So I do want to come back to that, but I want to invite to the conversation for just a moment. I want to invite Priscilla, because I know with what you've been doing, you're an author. We'll pop your book in the chat in just a moment. You've been so helpful, not just for me, but for others, in helping others find that path, you know what I mean? Like kind of finding their way through those challenges. So with not only your business, but with LifeGuides, what have you found to be supportive for people to focus on as they are going through transitions or trying to develop maybe even their business? What has been supportive for you to tell them as they continue to pivot?
Great question. And there are a few things that we come back to. So in the scope of well-being, I'm here to support your soul's well-being. That part of you that desires, craves, needs fulfillment, that longs and aches for a sense of greater meaning and purpose. and that wants to feel like you matter. And that can be in business. I work a lot with people in LifeGuides who are going through career transitions or who are growing a business where they're either on the verge of burnout or they're dissatisfied. And we come back to basic questions. It always comes back to my saying, the truth is simple. It's not easy, right? And so it comes down to what's your truth with a capital T. And these things goes back to what GenaSis was saying. What do you desire? What is the feeling that you desire to have, not only in your day-to-day, but as you make a contribution through your work? Do you want to feel joyful, happy, like it means something? Also, what is your true genius? And that's not always easy for us to answer, right? Because sometimes we forget what makes us so brilliant. But are you really operating in a zone where you are naturally shining? It's not work. You're not pushing through. You're not just kind of tolerating stuff or doing stuff that's been shoved on you, but that's really not your magic. And then what are your values? What really matters to you at this season of your life and this cycle of your business? Because we change, we're evolving, right? And so looking at all of these things, going down to the fundamentals, like from my health coaching days, like water, sleep, good foods, you go back to the basics for soul health, for soul well-being. What's the truth? What do you really want that maybe you're afraid to look at or to express or to choose for your life? Where is there incongruence where what you're saying and what you're doing, they're clashing? And where are you being pulled or called to next? And it's not easy when things are looking fine on the outside, but your soul is screaming for something else, or when there's chaos around you and you still have to find that center and say, no matter what, I am going to choose me, because if I don't, I'm going to die inside.
Wow. Sorry, excuse me. I'm okay. So if this were a rap battle, somebody would yell out bars, or if if this were a competition, someone would say mic drop. But all of you, thank you so much for contributing in the way you're doing. This is a great conversation about the connections, of not just soul, physical, mental, spiritual. It's all a part of a ecosystem, so to speak. And there are causes sometimes where people have that lack of the pie. Maybe it's a lack of community. And to you, Leslie, I know we talk about community a lot, especially with you being a part of the LGBTQIA community. What do you consider to be some of maybe the causes of lack, maybe of self-worth, that people are seeing, and the effects that are coming behind that, whether it be social isolation? What are you seeing as some of the causes, for that?
Actually, and thanks for asking, Dave, GenaSis, Priscilla, Carolyn, you guys have just offered such a wealth of information, and to tie this all in with everything, I feel that at the core, definitely as you peel back the layers, we all want to feel accepted and supported in our communities. We want to feel accepted and supported as an individual. And so I think as you start to pull back those layers, you start to connect with what that really looks like for you as an individual before you spread that out to community. I think it's really important to kind of have that sense of with who you are as far as your identity and how you identify yourself, to get those pieces solidified, because the way you identify yourself may not be how everyone outside identifies you. So you have to make sure that you're anchored and solid with that. And a lot of that has to do with evolving as a spiritual being first, and then addressing all the other layers and components with that, as far as your mental, emotional health, your physical health, and also your spiritual health, because all those things are connected. And once you start to peel one layer back, then you discover things about yourself that you didn't realize were even there, and things that you didn't realize you needed to address. So it really just kind of starts that snowball effect into an overall well-being. And then once you solidify all those things on an individual level, then I think it becomes important to reach out into the community, because then you make those other relationships and those other connections for those that are also struggling to find that sense of belonging and identity. And so I think it definitely starts on an individual level, but that's how we become a supported community, is by addressing the individual issues.
I like that you're mentioning supporting the community, because everyone here, thank you, you're a part of a community. You know, this is a part of the LifeGuide's greater community where we can connect and at sometimes even, you know, hold space not only for ourselves, but for others.
Mhm.
And when you mix in identity, which can kind of muddy at times the connections, whether it be somebody from a completely different identity who
Mhm.
doesn't maybe completely understand where someone else is coming from. So this all brings me to a thought, and I want to pose a question really quickly to Jenna. Can you tell me about you know, how you hold space for people? You're covering some real challenging and unusual topics, unusual that we don't talk about it as much as we should. And so how do you hold space for them?
Certainly. Yeah, I love those taboo topics. You know, anywhere that we have cut off parts of ourselves, those become shadows and they haunt us. They need to have a voice. So when I'm holding space for someone, it's very non-judgmental. I don't yuck anyone else's yum. I really encourage people to just deeply be embodied in themselves and their desires and not feel that shame. So I'm really holding a space that allows for freedom to be all of who you really are, to desire all of the things you truly desire. And from that, we really, you know, by giving these parts of ourselves voice, we're really empowered and we can become a powerful force for good on this planet, which we really need right now. But it's also, I'm doing so in like a playful, lighthearted, fun way. I'm really encouraging people to, you know, rekindle their romance and deepen their intimate connection, improve their communication skills, because really when we're building deeper relationships and we're reconnecting, we're stronger as individuals. And as Leslie talked about, we're stronger as a full community. We're from this place, we're giving from the overflow instead of burnout. And
Yes.
that's just so much more generative.
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah.
Especially because burnout is so prevalent. Presenteeism, we talk about it all the time,
Mhm.
where you're there, but you're not really there. You're just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah.
And how much of that, I mean, this is kind of me hypothesizing here, how much of that is attributed to what we're eating, what we're putting into our bodies, as well as what we're putting into our bodies from a soul standpoint, as far as the things that we're connecting with, the shadow that we're denying, the people that we're blocking out of our life. And so, again, going back to nutrition, there was a question that I had for you, Carolyn, when you had just brought up nutrition a little bit earlier about planning that. So, how can a member, let's say they connect with you, how can a member plan and implement a strategy to improve physical health? You know, specifically around nutrition.
Certainly. Well, I've been working with my students and clients over the years, and found really that our physical well-being is the basis for our mental, spiritual, emotional, our our inner selves. We have to be nourished within before we can reach out to our community, as Leslie is talking about. So when I work with people, I work with the questions around: what is your relationship with food? How were you brought up? How does your family function around food? What are the important, really important elements about your family's feeling of well-being and physical and mental and spiritual well-being? So all this is incorporated. I think our overall well-being supported by this very basis. So we talk about what are their goals? What do they want to do? They want to feel physically better. Sometimes there are some issues, health issues that food can support. Sometimes we find that they have a very, very busy schedule. We can talk about how to schedule, how to prep ahead, how to shop effectively and efficiently, how to plan, how to negotiate all these little difficulties that we run against every day, and to just incorporate that into our lives. People with children, how can we encourage children to get involved with food preparation? There's so many lessons you can teach and you can learn in the kitchen. There's fractions and reading, and they're just bringing all these things together. And again, like GenaSis is talking about, in a playful way, it's not onerous, it's fun and fulfilling. And we find that when we feel well, we're so much better with everybody else. We're better with ourselves, we're better with our families, we're better with our coworkers, we're better with our communities. So I encourage people to look at physical well-being, nutrition, exercise as not as something that has to be, gotta do this, this is gonna be hard, but I need to buckle down. No, make a few changes. You can enjoy the experience and thrive through better nutrition, better health in all these ways.
Outstanding. When we were in the green room, it's not the green room, it's the Zoom room, but I call it the green room because I wanted to make it seem like it's fun. You were talking about stealth nutrition. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I think that would be a helpful add. And I see that we just posted in there the Find Center link to healthy eating hacks, which is interesting. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Certainly. The Find Center is a wonderful a place to find information about so many topics. The video is talking about nutrition hacks. I used to call it stealth nutrition. I have stealth nutrition and stealth exercise. When my children were young, I know, I get it in there somewhere, right? When my children were young and they were having their friends over, I was brought up, nutrition's really important, and that's what I tried to impart to my children. So every meal that I could, just an example, if I'm making spaghetti sauce, it wouldn't be just ground turkey or whatever and mushrooms and onions. Oh no, I'd sneak in some shredded zucchini, all the vegetables I could pile in there. My kids loved it. Mashed potatoes often was more of a mash, a vegetable mash. There are all kinds of vegetables in there, and we just call it smash. And putting first, instead of feeding my children a box cereal, I found they absolutely loved ground chia. Nutritional yeast is a wonderful thing to add for a lot of B vitamins. So just so many nuts and fruits and seeds that can be added more stealthily to smoothies or to meals that just enhance the overall nutrition of the meal. And it's fun, just try to sneak in all the nutrition you can. And I found that I was lucky, my children have carried this into adulthood and are feeding their children that way. So it's become kind of a family game.
Nice. And a little bit of a tradition as well. You're finding ways to do things together. And again, this points to the importance of what we put in our body and how it affects our overall well-being. Because of course, cooking together, that's more community, more togetherness. And we're social beings, even though we act like sometimes we're not. We really need to have connection with community. But taking a quick pivot, I want to bring a question to Priscilla, because everyone who's on the line today, thank you again for being here. We're all working in some way. We're working in different teams. We're working on different projects. We're entrepreneurs, and things change, and it's hard to keep ourselves together, when things change, and how do we maintain our well-being? So I wanted to ask you, Priscilla, about, let's say hypothetically, I'm an entrepreneur and I really just don't want to compromise my values or my well-being with the job that I'm doing. But, I know I kind of have to. How do I shift, or how would you recommend maybe I shift, or how do I start this process of kind of taking a quick pivot?
Great question. I think that there are parallels between Carolyn and I in terms of some of the prescriptions. I think that small, powerful tweaks can make a huge change. But more importantly, I would say that we start with the end in mind. We start with what you desire in terms of how you wish to feel at work, right? So, because here's the thing, there's that Albert Einstein quote, right? That you can't fix the problem, and you can't find the solution with the energy of the problem. So my point is that if you want to find a solution, don't stay in that like contracted energy of, oh, I have a problem. There's a problem. I don't know how to fix it. You need to transcend to kind of what I call the eagle's view, the bigger picture view versus the rabbit view, where you're just kind of like, you can just see what's in front of you. I have a problem. My schedule is getting bigger. My inbox is about to explode. And this person just called me an idiot. And I think that they should go and be an idiot. All of a sudden you just create more of that feeding frenzy versus let's look at the eagle view, which is expansive, free, open, infinite possibilities. So if you are an entrepreneur, I have a LifeGuide who's going through this right now. And she's like, I don't even know if I want to be an entrepreneur. And if I'm going to continue to be an entrepreneur, first question I asked her was like, what are the non-negotiables of what you need for your emotional, financial, and business well-being, right? What do you need to make it worthwhile, energizing, nourishing, and fulfilling? Bigger, broad question, right? Because that gets your mind to think beyond the problem into the truth of what you desire. And in this case, what is congruent, what is in alignment, what matches what's going to work for you sustainably. We're creating a match. It's like a matchmaking. What business model, what role are you going to have in your business? And this goes also for your company. What's going to work for you? For you, let's start with you. So often we go out and try to do SEO to fix this, to blame the manager, to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But we start with us. We're everywhere, right? No matter what we do in our lives. So what do you need to be energized, nourished, and fulfilled in your career or in your company, right? Then we'll look at what are you tolerating, denying, or shaming about the truth of what you need. Do you need to have more support? Do you need to have a tough conversation? Do you need to fire someone? Do you need to shift the role of how you're showing up in your business, right? So simple, bigger questions. We're going eagle view, right? Because now we're not addressing a specific problem with the mentality of the problem. We're looking at what do you need to thrive as an entrepreneur and as a leader in your field. And then we adjust the details, the micro, to fit the macro. That creates alignment, right? Because we start with you. And I'd always tell people, when you know yourself better, you lead better. You need to know, what do you really want? What do you need? What energizes you and what pisses you off? You need to know these things. And so much of that important question is, what am I tolerating over and over and over again? What patterns or habits do I seem to have that keep creating more conflict? And it starts with you. And ultimately, who do you want to be as you show up in your business? What kind of a contribution do you want to be? What kind of values do you want to exude and to be an example of to your employees, to your team members, to your clients, to your staff? It starts with you, and it all starts with understanding and knowing yourself, and for the love of God, telling the truth to yourself. And sometimes it's hard to do that all on your own. That's why LifeGuides, that's why support, it can be helpful for people to reflect not only what you're amazing at, and also where some sticky bits that either we have blind spots to, or it's just really hard to confront. Make sense? And then we can get to the rabbit, but we start with the rabbit. There's a problem. Oh my gosh, how do I just clean my inbox? Great, that's a great thing. but that doesn't address the multiple layers of how you're showing up fully and how there can be a cohesive congruence throughout every aspect of your life and your career and your business. If your business does not reflect what matters to you, you have a job, you're a slave to that business, and it's not going to make you thrive or well.
Interesting. As that hypothetical entrepreneur, I am, now just thinking about myself and how do I fit? What are those boundaries? Those questions that you asked are important to know thyself to actually be able to thrive. And I know we've been talking a little bit about exploring pleasure. So knowing thyself is a good segue to ask Gena a question about just maybe how can people find balance with understanding themselves and even exploring themselves more?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I'm glad you popped over, because as I was hearing Priscilla talk about know thyself, it really also comes to love thyself and recognizing your own innate value and your worthiness, your deservingness to be happy, to live a life that fills you up, that lights you up, that brings you pleasure. And so when I'm working with members, I'm really helping them tune in to loving and accepting all of the parts of themselves. And with some, I even do some mirror work, where they're taking that time to look directly into the mirror and to love and appreciate parts of themselves. I work with members on positive body image also. So whether this is a face mirror or a full body mirror, but really expressing appreciation and love for all of our parts. I'm grateful for my thighs that are strong and allow me to, run my errands. I'm grateful for, my body that carried this child and was able to give them a healthy birth. I appreciate, the way my eyes sparkle, and really working with members in a way that helps them connect with themselves in a loving, warm, appreciating, kind way. I used an analogy of a bucket with holes in it. If your bucket has holes in it, it doesn't matter how much love, appreciation, whatever anyone else is pouring into you, it's going to flow right back out and you're going to still feel like you've got an empty bucket. Whereas when you patch your holes with self-love, with self-appreciation, with worthiness, with deservingness, and knowing that you now have a full vessel, a vessel that can be filled, that can receive, and then can give from that overflow.
And Dave,
Go
I'd
for it.
love to build on that a little bit. That self-love that GenaSis is talking about, and Priscilla is talking about knowing yourself. This is so important. We need to love ourselves enough to feed ourselves, nourish ourselves, not just with food, not with just physical activity, but with positive input and accepting ourselves. And all of us are going to come across some big challenges in our lives. And having that basis of filling ourselves up and being ready to face whatever comes our way is so important, because then when the challenges come, we're strong, we're steady within ourselves, we know our values, we know our morals, we know how we want to show up for others and for ourselves.
Nice
And I'd like to
building on that.
piggyback on that as well, Carolyn. Thank you for saying that. Because sometimes I think part of the process is unraveling things within yourself that may not even be your stuff. It may be just things that have been programmed into you from family, from friends, from other experiences in your life that have kind of maybe locked some fears in place that you have to now go in and you have to pull those out to really get to the core of who you are and what you like and kind of start with the basics. Just speaking a little bit about how, Carolyn, you were talking about, which I think is amazing, how your kids, and I think we should start early, with our children with exploring foods and eating properly and eating healthy, to start those foundations. I didn't really, I didn't have a bad relationship with food, but I could have had a much better relationship with food. But as I'm older, realizing that some of those things are actually the emotional components that I didn't deal with. As I got older, I addressed the issues of, okay, I understand how important it is to eat properly, to eat a balanced meal, to have enough energy in order to be able to perform your basic duties, not just in career, but in life in general. But as I continued to pull back more layers, I realized that some of those things that were locking in the unhealthy patterns were just the emotional and mental components that I was telling myself. And so when I tried to address other issues, other things came up. And so seeing how interlocked and how intertwined those things were just was a further confirmation for me as to why putting my own well-being was so important before I was able to reach out and help others. Even through my spiritual coaching practice and how I help other people kind of gain a sense of clarity and awareness, one thing they have to understand about that process is sometimes you're going to uncover things that you didn't know were there, or things that it may be very challenging to undo and to create and put new positive things in place of that. So once you start that journey of saying, I want to be a better version of myself, I want to step up and be present in my life, sometimes that requires work. And we might take a couple steps backward, but the idea is that we keep moving forward through those things, because like you said, so looking at the bigger picture, getting a wider lens sometimes keeps us in motion and moving forward, to get to the end goal in mind, and not looking at those little things like, oh, I screwed up today, I didn't eat healthy today, I didn't put me first today. The bigger picture is tomorrow you can get to show up again, and you get to try it again. And then you even maybe get to try a different perspective or a different angle to put you right where you need to be. And it just aligns everything as long as you continue to keep pulling those layers back. So I think it just is so important.
Leslie,
I like
what's
that.
so important to me is that putting yourself first. I don't think, especially those of us who are women on this panel, we are not, at least my generation wasn't brought up to think of putting myself first.
Yeah.
But you have to in order to fulfill other people's needs.
Right.
And so that is something that I think we really have a challenge with our culture. We have to understand that it is absolutely okay to concerned about our own well-being. I know I had to be a caregiver a great deal of my life, and that when in working with other caregivers, I find that not only is there no time, but they're drained mentally, emotionally, physically. They don't get enough sleep, and so maybe recognizing that we need to fill our own cup before we can give to others is very important. And finding pleasure, as GenaSis says, finding purpose, as Priscilla brought up. These are all things that unless we can feed ourselves, we cannot show up for our community.
Nope.
Yeah, I'm always reminded of, anytime you get on an airplane, put on your own mask before assisting others.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you black out, you're no good to anyone.
Nope. It's so true. It's so true. But we think that there's something, and there's an actual term for that. I don't know if it's called the mule syndrome, or where we take on all these responsibilities of other people, but we just leave ourselves out, and we think, oh, well, this is required of me because I'm a life coach, or I'm a spiritual coach, or I have to show up for everyone else, because otherwise no one will be able to move forward. But we don't sometimes take that amount of energy and put on us and say, well, like you said, GenaSis, you can't continue to keep pouring in a bucket that has holes in it. And you can try, but what'll wind up happening, you'll look back and say, why is my bucket empty? Why am I frustrated and angry? Why am I in a place of just wanting to turn and walk away from all of it? And you have that kind of crash and burn. I know I've hit that point in my spiritual coaching business. Having done this over 25 years, I've had those moments where it's like, I'm done. I don't want to talk to anybody. I just leave me alone. you know, and then when I really, really had to look at what was going on, somewhere I dropped the ball with Leslie. I dropped that ball and I didn't give her the attention she needed. So now she's screaming and saying, wait, stop. I need someone to help address these needs. And really, it's me needing to address those needs within myself, because nobody can really do that for us. They can go along on the side of us and support us. But the real work comes from when we have to look at those unhealed places and realize we got a little work we need to do. And that could be through shadow work. That can be through getting you an accountability partner. It can be through anything that keeps the spotlight on you as an individual, again, before you reach out into the communities, because if you're a weak link, reaching out to the communities will cause others to maybe feel less supported. And you want to give it your all. You want to make sure that when you're putting that olive branch out for support, that you're strong enough to hold it. So it's just really important.
I
I
think
think of it as us we all have our own part of the net that we need to hold. And so
Yes.
we need to be strong to hold our part to then
Mhm.
keep a strong network or a strong knitting for the whole community.
Yes.
And Nikki in chat brings up a really good point, and something that I've heard a lot, saying really good with cooking and love nutrition and food in general, but sometimes feels helpless when they get triggered emotionally, I'm assuming, and can't control their emotions and end up eating until we're sick.
Yeah.
Well, there are ways to get in touch with yourself and understand, as we've all talked about, understand what is it in us that's getting triggered. And how
Mhm.
do we work with those triggers so that this doesn't happen and we can just love feeding ourselves and enjoying and not having food turn into something that's negative in our lives, because it shouldn't be. It should be a complete pleasure for us.
Wow. Go for it, Priscilla.
Thank you, Carolyn. I agree with all the ladies very much. It is definitely a journey of our becoming our fullest potential is really the journey of unraveling and hooking and disconnecting from all the ways that we do not know ourselves or love ourselves, or it's really an unraveling of all the hooks and conditions that have been put upon us oftentimes by others, and that we get to then design the life that we want to lead. But I want to share a very simple question that I ask myself multiple times a day is, so in terms of work or purpose or meaning or business, on a daily basis, I say, what do I need today to be okay or to thrive, right? What do I need today? And then as the day progresses, right, I can get tired, cranky, hangry, is what do I need right now? And that also was, I was an emotional eater for 30 years, Carolyn. I gained and lost 30 pounds for 30 years. And the biggest challenge was learning to know that my emotions weren't going to kill me, but eating my way through them was kind of killing my spirit, right? But I would say that really being present, which is what I think Leslie was saying about being present to our lives and being present to what we're feeling and what we need, is not only a tool to not go to food when food cannot comfort us, but to give us ourselves truly what we need. And that creates congruence. That creates us making choices that match who we want to be and the life we want to have. It connects the dots over time. So asking ourselves questions, doing these check-ins, like emotional check-ins, body, what do you need? Body will tell you. The body never lies. And that's a practice. It can be hard if you've experienced trauma or mistrust of your body to find that partnership with your body, because I was always at war. Like, body, you're going to suffer. But body is a partner. It's an amazing gauge. So the more we can find that sense of trust and relying on its own wisdom, it'll tell you, I'm tired. I need a nap. I'm tired. I can't take one more call. I need an hour to myself. So in terms of resourcefulness that GenaSis was saying earlier, really learning to use our body, our emotions, food, all those whispers that come to us as valuable golden information will allow us then to remain the golden goose that continues to lay the golden eggs, right? Being our own best ally instead of malnourishing ourselves to the point of anemia and being exhausted and burned out. Because I burned out twice. It's a long road to come back physically and
Yes.
emotionally after that. And you don't want to go there. It's kind of like getting sick. You just don't want to do it if you can help it. And burnout is always a sign of misalignment, of pushing through perfectionism, trying to do what everyone else tells you you should, or being afraid of asking for what you really want and having the life that you really believe is possible for you.
Absolutely. I agree with that, Priscilla, because just like how you were saying, you've had that burnout, that road to recovery is such a long road back. Just to share my personal experience with my journey with food, and realizing that I didn't have a bad relationship with food, but what actually has been happening over the course of being of service to others is not putting healthy boundaries in place. So my body's way of protecting me from not having those healthy boundaries in place was to put more padding on, because it was stemming from a mental emotional issue. It actually wasn't coming from my relationship with food. So this is why when we start to really examine things that's really going on with the body and tuning in, it's important to hear all of the whispers, all of the things that's being said to you, because you might be looking in one area when you need to be looking in another area, because it's a whole body approach. And the mental emotional components that play so much into that, I think sometimes we address the physical, but we don't get to the core. And if you don't get to the core, before you know it, it's going to be out of alignment again. It's just a matter of time. So it's just so important that we do go within and really, really examine the whole body, and just look at different areas that we may be carrying around some really unwanted luggage, that because it changes through different cycles and times in our life. We don't always need the same thing at all times. So we always have to kind of have that check-in. I think it's really important at different various stages and chapters. We need to examine where we are.
And I love
Absolutely.
that check-in, Leslie, because I think that we've been kind of culturized to not
Yeah.
feel that it's okay to check in with ourselves. It's
Yeah.
not okay to put ourselves first. It's not okay for us to want pleasure. It's not okay for us to ask for what we need or want.
Mhm.
And it's really the only way.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you. I think we, culturally, societally have been kind of taught, it's all from the neck up, think hard, work hard. But by opening up the channel to the rest of our body, being able to listen to it, there's so much wisdom there. And there's so much more centering and grounding that can come from that. And as Priscilla touched on, there may be trauma in your background,
Yeah.
or as Leslie touched on, you may have had your boundaries crossed way too many times.
Yeah.
Right.
So connecting with your own body, you can rebuild that trust. You
Yes.
can start with, just a moment of quiet. What part of my body needs a little extra love right now?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good chance there's some of in your neck or your shoulders. A lot of us tend to carry our attention there. So just giving yourself 5 minutes of pleasure, 5 minutes of just listening to your body. What does my body want right now? Ooh, my body wants some neck circles. My body wants a hug or some caressing. My body wants my hair stroked. Just whatever it is that your body is asking for, listening to that little voice and giving it to it.
Yes.
Such a gift to give your body a voice, the ability to be heard, and then return what it's requesting.
Can I add something really quickly? Is that desires are a full sentence, like no. I desire this is a pure manifestation of what's really true for you. So I'm just going to add a caveat that when the mind goes, but I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I can't afford it. Can you just allow yourself to play and be in the energy of the desire? Because that energy of like, okay, well, be curious. I wonder, like if you really want a vacation, if you really can't go somewhere really right now big, well, can you go to a park? Can you go to a friend's backyard, maybe house sit for a couple of days and just get away? Can you be willing to be so creative creative and also have faith that there are resources available to fulfill all your desires. They may not all happen right away, but I want you to be an ally to your desires and not just chop their heads off, at least not right away.
Right.
Yeah, give them a little
Never
time.
chop their heads off. Please.
I know. I always
Desires deserve to live.
I
They
know.
need it.
I know. I always tell people that your desires are your soul whispering to you, right? Those soul desires, those deep, they don't require any rationalization. They're just there. They just ooze deliciousness. And
Mhm.
desires are here to help us really live our fullest and best life. And that goes from I really want a really good piece of chocolate to I want amazing sex, or I want a different business, to I want to lose weight because I'm going to feel great. I want new friends. It doesn't matter. Small or big, desire will never fail you, ever.
Mhm.
So you be your own best friend and at least give it a listen, right? Because denying the truth doesn't make it go away. It only
Yeah,
makes you more unhappy. And grumpy.
absolutely.
Think of desires as putting in an order with the cosmic waitress, right?
Okay.
You place your desire order and you just send it off, and you have confidence that it will be brought to you in due time.
I like that.
You don't have to worry about the buts and how would I afford it? How, why this and all that. You don't have to worry about all that. Just place your order with the cosmic waitress. Say, I desire to have, hot, vibrant energy throughout my day, and feel that. Just feel into the energy of having that desire delivered back.
How important is it that everything that I really just sat back, like I made sure to just to let you ladies rock, because you are rocking right now, and talking about the intersections of how soul, how what we put in our body, and also community, and how we actually view ourselves filters into the overall topic of well-being and mental health. Because I can hear in each thing that you've mentioned, if one of those is missing, if I'm not, putting in my order, as far as desires, if I'm not telling the truth, there's going to be a disconnect. If I'm not taking care of my body, there's going to be a disconnect. And I love that you ladies took this expansive view, from micro as far as the individual to macro, taking it to this expansive view of community and how we show up. And as we, move to close, although I know we can continue on because it's a wonderful conversation, I want to, of course, encourage anyone, if you have any other questions, please put them in for the panelists and we can answer them. But what I just did was just gave a little bit of the takeaways that I'm taking away, just sitting back and learning from you four. So I wanted to pose. Typically, we do a gratitude at the end of our sessions, but we're going to do a little bit different today. And I wanted to ask the last question regarding well-being. What are your takeaways today? Regarding mental health, what are your takeaways today? And please, if you can, put them in the chat, because you can't imagine how much your feedback or your reflection may help somebody else. So I'll even open it up to the panelists, to the ladies. What are you taking away today?
Well, go ahead, Carolyn.
Sorry. Well, I was thinking one of the things that I'm taking away today is that our purpose in life, as Priscilla kind of opened with, is so very important for our well-being. But then to be able to fulfill our purpose in life, we have to have the underpinnings. So the underpinnings of nutrition and love and all these things that are so important to us internally, that then we have the energy to give. And I believe that giving to others is a very important aspect for our own well-being. If it's just about us, it's so insular. If we can share our love, our hopes, our desires, our dreams, our knowledge, our experience with others, that, at least for me, that makes my life mean something. It makes the trauma mean something. It means the hardships mean something. Everything that I've gone through, the joy, but that meaning is so important.
Absolutely. GenaSis, I actually, I have a few nuggets that I'm taking away from you today, if you don't mind. Carolyn, also Priscilla, but GenaSis, I definitely want to take a few nuggets from you because you are into honoring the body in all aspects, finding pleasure within the physical body. And sometimes when you're going through a stage where you don't feel as good about the physical body, and there may be other parts of us that we glorify and we highlight, but then when we get to those parts that we really don't, we're not particularly pleased with at this particular time in our life. You know, if you got extra weight, or if you're dealing with some type of body modification or something that's going on, it's kind of hard sometimes to sit down and say, you know, I love you. I love that sparkle in your eye. I love the roundness of your thighs. I love that my knees and my legs are carrying me forward so I can get through my day. Because sometimes we look at where we're not, but we fail to look at where we are. And so we have to have a sense of gratitude for just waking up and being able to continue to move forward and get through those goals and get through those moments where we may not feel as body positive as we should. And that's a huge part of the piece of the puzzle. We can't just cast that out because we're not happy with how our bodies look or what we're going through in that aspect. So thank you for that. Definitely highlighting and putting attention there. It falls in alignment with where I am. And it's a constant effort. You know, you would think after 25 years of, you know, being a spiritual coach to others, there's always work that we can do. There's always an opportunity for us to be a better version of ourselves. So I thank you because I am on that layer. So appreciate your insights so much.
Thank you. Thank you for reflecting that back. Oh, yes, it's true. I mean, really, the takeaway is just how there's all of these components to well-being, and that really by working on each of them in little ways, it doesn't have to be a dramatic total, you know, shift, but working on each one in individual ways, it really allows us to feel alive, radiant, glowing. We can be growing, and from that we can be truly free. We can get off of our little gerbil treadmills and we can be free to live vibrant lives.
Yes.
If I may interject, thank you so much, Leslie and GenaSis, for your contributions. I will say, Leslie, that if my takeaway of, I think, the thread of our conversations and of my journey is that love truly is the answer, right? For me to be able to partner with my body, I had to love the cellulite, the dimples, the rolls. When I loved and I stopped fighting, my body could relax. And in the relaxing, I could heal and the weight could go. And that's emotional, physical, trauma, the whole thing. What food can I choose right now that will be loving and kind? What words can I say to myself that are kind and loving to myself? What choices can I make at work and how I run my business that honor who I am and they're a reflection of my love and cherishing of myself? It all comes back to, and Fred had this question on her fridge, what would love have me do today in this moment? And that cuts through all the noise and it gets you back to love and truth. Always, forever will keep you true to yourself and kind and well.
All love. All right. Well, if you can pop some reactions in there, pop some hearts. Let's
Thanks
see
for
them
the
hearts
love.
fly.
Yes, I know
Thanks
it
for the
might sound
love.
cliche, but hey, it's a reason it's there. Love is the answer, people.
Yes,
Right.
it is. It
Love
is.
is the answer.
And it starts with self-love.
Starts and ends.
Yes,
All day.
right?
Circle
thank
comes
you.
right back around.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a perfect picture of a perfect circle and displaying the balance of everything. I know we're at time. Thank you everyone for being a part. Thank you for everyone who stayed, you know, through to the end. We appreciate each and every one of you. We will see you next time on our next session. Wonderful session, ladies. Definitely one of my favorites. Much appreciation to you as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you
Bye,
so
everyone.
much, Dr. Dave. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye, girls.
Bye.